All right, greetings everybody. Welcome to the Media Files fan commentary podcast. Tonight's a bit of a special episode. I was kind of browsing around and through my feed. I noticed that unfortunately, director Ted Kotcheff has passed away at the age of 94, who basically directed the movie we're going to be discussing this evening. Probably his best known film, First Blood, of course, being the first film in the Rambo series. So with that, basically, I felt that this would just be a nice, memoriam for, the late director and whatnot, but he's also directed some other great movies as well. And not only that, though, I also wanted to discuss, how much I love, the Rambo movies. And we'll get on to those much later on, but for tonight, it will be just the first film. And so with that, grab some popcorn or whatever it is you want to eat, drink, pop into your DVD, Blu-ray, or if you have it on iTunes or whatever it is you use for streaming, and make sure we are marked at 0. And with that, I'll let you know when to count down and start playing the movie so you can listen, watch along, and listen to me as well. So with that, you guys, I'll see you. Enjoy. Greetings, everybody, and welcome to the Media Files Fan Commentary Podcast. I am your host, AJO400, and today we are going to be doing one of my absolute favorite films of my entire collection. Today we are going to do the commentary for First Blood, the very first Rambo film. And so with that, you guys, we got lots of stuff to cover. So with that, if you have your DVD or Blu-ray or even iTunes copy ready to go and all synced up, make sure everything starts at 0. And here we go. Starting in 3, 2, 1, hit play. All right, so here we are with probably one of the greatest, opening music tunes of all time. So here we have legendary composer Jerry Goldsmith with his really great guitar riff and trumpet solo here. Sadly, as of this recording, the director of the film, Ted Kotcheff, recently just passed away. So may he rest in peace. But he brought one of the, basically started this whole thing. And, what can we say? May he ever rest in peace. So here we have this opening shot of Rambo walking down basically just a dirt road, a gravel road with out in the woods, basically. Of course, Rambo being a Vietnam vet, which was basically kind of based on a whole bunch of interviews done by author David Morrell, who also wrote the book entitled First Blood. And what's great about this is that if you notice Stallone's acting here in the very beginning of the film, you notice obviously he's alone and whatnot, because we kind of know that's how Rambo is. But as you notice, here he is, he's at this house, and he sees kids playing. If you notice, he's got this smile on his face. Like he's really good to be alive and everything. And, he's going to see one of his good old Vietnam buddies and whatnot. And so let's go to see Delmar Berry, who's basically one of his friends that he mentioned during when he was serving in Vietnam. And which is great about this, that you gotta love this long take of just this really great, cabin on the lake type of shot. And of course, the producers Mario Kassar and Andrew Vania would, of course, go on to do other great titles, of course, like the Terminator franchise and whatnot, and everything. But such a great opening. Within the first just 5 minutes of the film, you get this really sense of like somewhat of a loner, or possibly just kind of want to figure out what I want to do. And so here's Rambo talking about Delmar, basically introducing himself to what I think that is possibly Delmar's, could be either his mom or his sister. It's never really explained. I would say probably his mom. But of course, that's something you really don't see now. You see the old clothesline out there, and of course, he's basically, she's hanging up clothes while Rambo's trying to talk to her and whatnot. Um, but one of the interesting thing is that basically Rambo is basically saying, "Hey, well, he's a friend of mine, and he told me to come visit him at this address." And of course, he's now showing, of course, the picture of him and all of his Vietnam buddies, and which is something that I mean, you never get a close up shot of who they actually are and whatnot. And so it's just kind of interesting how basically we viewed the war and stuff like that back then. But unfortunately, now Rambo, you can tell the expression on his face has just changed, literally. She's this lady's basically explaining to him that Delmar died of the Agent Orange chemical that was spread around during Vietnam, which caused cancer. And of course, that was a big thing back then. And I'm not sure. I don't think that they actually do that anymore. But that was kind of a thing to get rid of, to help out with the war and whatnot. But you know, so he basically gives her this picture for her to remember him by. So basically, if you really just take a look at this scene very carefully throughout the rest of the series, this is pretty much that is the only time you will ever see Rambo basically be happy. So that's basically, so now he's basically on his own. He's just wants to try to go on, try to live life the best way he can. But obviously now he feels like he's alone and whatnot, which is obviously which a lot of guys are probably probably felt back then. So now here we are introduced to the town sheriff, played by Brian Dennehy. Such a great performance. And whatnot. But it's just a small town and whatnot. But of course, I remember him, of course, from he would go on to do many years later the William Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet, the Baz Luhrmann '90s version of the film, where he basically plays Romeo's dad, basically. But I mean, it's kind of interesting looking at this time, because here it is in the '70s, and you don't see, like, for example, like Scotch drugs, like a local drugstore or whatever, and like the small little shopping plazas and whatnot. You just don't, you hardly see that anymore and whatnot. And so that, and then also golf, oil and whatnot. So, but it's just, so basically, it looks like he's the sheriff of Hope County is basically where he's the sheriff of and whatnot. And so basically, he's telling him, hey. So here I am, who are you walking into my town, basically, and he's basically, you kind of tell he's not really liking Rambo all that much. But one of the more interesting things is that I think in the actual film commentary, they mention that the character of the sheriff, he's actually a Korean War vet, and which is kind of interesting because obviously the Korean War took place about a decade, almost 2 decades really, prior to Vietnam and whatnot. But you kind of tell that obviously, that the Denny really doesn't like what happened with Vietnam. Of course, lots of people didn't back then. And it's only kind of really fitting that kind of now, really, is kind of, if you notice, a lot of the war vets that are kind of getting older now are, kind of what the World War II vets did about a few decades prior, is that now they're the ones that they're kind of getting more and more focused on and whatnot, which is kind of interesting because, obviously, with as time goes on, obviously the Vietnam vets are going to start giving out their stories as they get a lot older, basically explaining, hey, this is what we did, this is what happened, and what have you. And so, but I mean, I just love it. But here it is, we're in the opening, 10 minutes of the film, we've already expressed like so much within the basically the whole like background of just two characters basically. And so basically this little town that he's a sheriff of, it's just this random little town in the middle of nowhere, and basically it's probably like just one of those towns in any rural America basically, where it's just got a small amount of people just trying to live out their lives. But basically, he's telling him that he's heading to Portland and basically and whatnot. But I mean, it's never really specified really exactly what state the this film takes place in, but it's kind of interesting that I'm gonna guess it's probably somewhere in Oregon, which is what I would imagine it to be. So as the sheriff basically led Rambo right out of town, basically he's just gonna do what he does and walk back the other way because basically the sheriff doesn't want him in there. But I mean, it's just kind of interesting, seeing this now, so many years later, of how obviously times have definitely changed. But then again, you look at Dennehy's performance here, and he's such a bastard. I mean, obviously, because he's you know just kind of how he's supposed to be and whatnot. With just kind of more of like one of those corrupt cop type of guys, characters and whatnot. But it's kind of funny. I mean, here it is. He's basically wanting to put him, under arrest, basically for just you know walking in town, basically, it's basically thinking that he has no ID, so it's just like a homeless guy and whatnot. But, because of course you look at Rambo, he's just like, seriously, dude, what's your deal? I have not done anything to you. I just want to be left alone after finding out this information that I just found out. I just found out that probably one of my best friends from Nam is basically gone, and basically everybody in my unit is gone, and I'm the only one basically left. I have basically no friends left in this world. I'm all alone and whatnot. But yeah, get a load of that knife right there. It's actually a bow knife. It's actually a hunting knife. But you gotta love it how just uh, that's great. That's such a great line. Well, why would you carry a knife like this? What do you hunt? Name it. That's such a great line coming from him. But if you kind of notice there in the sheriff's office, way off on the right there, Rambo, technically, if you really want to talk about it, technically, First Blood is a Christmas movie because they've got the tree right there, and then of course the banister right underneath the the front thing there. There's a little sign that says "Merry Christmas," and of course you got the snowman in the back. So technically, this movie basically takes place in probably sometime in the month of December. So obviously it's colder out there and whatnot, but you know. So then, so now you got some of the other corrupt cops and whatnot, and Rambo kind of eyeballing the gun rack there, which is kind of a foreshadowing moment. Um, but then you got that other cop there, of course, with the baton, and he's just another one of the sheriff's best buds, basically. Kind of one of those type of guys that basically it's just like, I'm gonna do whatever I want to do because I've got the power to do so, and you're not gonna I'm not gonna take any type of crap from you. So of course, so you got then you got the other cop there who's kind of like the young gun, the guy who basically is like, well, he's basically, pretty innocent from what I could tell. But of course, Rambo's now having flashbacks at this time during Vietnam, obviously, with them throwing the sludge and whatnot on him and whatnot, and he's basically just remembering everything. And of course, obviously that haunts soldiers who have PTSD basically and whatnot. But of course, with Stallone's acting, basically, he's just staring at him like, really? I can take this guy out in about 2 seconds. But, so, yeah, I mean, it's such a great movie, though. I mean, within, literally within the first very early minutes of the film here, you just kind of get this very interesting vibe of basically, here it is, a guy who's basically lost his best friend, and what am I going to do? So, but yeah, so we find out that his full name is John J. Rambo. Of course, the J is never really explained. Um, but one of the more interesting things is that about the character of Rambo is that basically he wanted to go off and fight in Vietnam, basically, because according to some of the more interesting background information about him, is basically his father, our Rambo, as you will. I think I want to say his name is Ron, but I can't. I don't remember exactly what his dad's first name is, but I guess his dad was kind of abusive and whatnot, so that's why he wanted to go and basically just go to Vietnam and do what he wants to do. So, so of course now you got Dennehy coming in here, basically saying, "Hey, what's the problem? You're trying to get fingerprinted and whatnot, but but what can I say though? I mean, this movie's it's so good. I mean, it really is. Of course, with Dennehy there, him trying to abuse his power, obviously, basically saying that hey, you're just a drifter. You're just some random guy that walks into my town. I don't like you, so I'm gonna basically put you in front of the judge so you get some jail time and whatnot. But you know, so but yeah, so I'm sure this is probably kind of awkward for Stallone to, I mean, to do this type of movie, obviously. But what's kind of interesting is that you look at him, of course, the young cop there basically saying, like, hey, look at him. He's got all these battle scars on him and stuff and whatnot. But you know, obviously that's from battle scars from Vietnam, basically when he was a POW and whatnot. But you know, so so it's kind of what they do with a lot of a lot of cop characters back then. They make them all the you know try to do that, but that's gotta be hard on you. I mean, you got that fire hydrant hose that water water on it, basically telling them to forget to wipe behind the ears and stuff. But I mean, you gotta wonder though how they were able to keep you know the the makeup on Stallone's back, like the scar makeup and stuff, like how they were able to keep that on there. I mean, because obviously I don't think that's actually real. I don't think he actually has those scars on him for life. But you know, so I mean, like I said, so I mean, this kind of scene goes on for a little bit of a while, but of course, now with him having all these different reactions and stuff that these cops are doing to him, basically he's taking it right back to his um, that's his instinct to basically survive. His Vietnam instincts are kicking into gear, basically. I mean, anybody would be trying to do that, basically trying to breathe and whatnot when you have a baton right up against your throat and stuff. But of course, he sees the blade that the cop has. You can tell how scared he is because obviously, the when he was a POD, basically, I mean, it shows it right here. I mean, basically, him getting you know basically cut, torturing him for information, basically. So, yeah, that's gotta be. I mean, obviously, that's gotta hurt. So, but yeah, so yeah, finally we get a little bit of action going on in here. Stallone obviously taking out a bunch of cops and whatnot. I mean, you can kind of tell he didn't kind of want to hit the younger cop, but he kind of had no choice. But look at the guy there in the jail cell there that you don't really notice until that little wide shot there. But I love the simple action choreography of you know of like a lot of the stuff and whatnot. But I think I'm not sure if that was real glass or not. I think it was probably paint glass, but you know, but so yeah, Rambo on the loose. Time to get out of jail, basically, and there we go. I think I want to say that was probably a real stunt because you kind of tell the actual impacts of the glass and stuff. But ow, elbow to the nose. But yep. So I love it. I mean, Jerry Goldsmith's score kicks into gear here. Rambo just kind of waiting on something, and he takes a motorbike. So this is kind of interesting. I like seeing all of these, like different stores and stuff throughout this small town, basically. And so there we go. But so now they're gonna have a nice little chase sequence that happens, which is kind of interesting. I mean, because Stallone was basically saying that throughout this entire movie, he's basically he's just wearing that the he's basically he's I'm having a brain fart here, guys. I apologize. Basically, he's just wearing just a tank top, basically, and when they were shooting, it's really cold. Um, but that car really flew over the. That car definitely got some air. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think this movie came out. Obviously, it came out in the '70s, but of course, that same Ford, vehicle is basically this pretty much the same one uh, that Gene Hackman would drive in the French Connection, with it being the Ford vehicle, not necessarily the cop car, but just very similar vibe. Because back then, if you notice, a lot of the vehicles in the '70s they were big, long, and really kind of boxy and whatnot. But you know, such a great chase sequence, though. I mean, you can just sometimes it's just so hard to do a commentary when you have this really great action scene going on and whatnot. But I mean, what can I say? It's such a great movie. It really is. Definitely a movie of its time. But what can we say though? Sometimes these older movies, basically, they have like just they have like a certain vibe to them that you just can't capture. With this day and age with digital cinema, obviously with the whole thing being shot on film, obviously the film's going to have a little bit different look to it and whatnot. But you know, what can I say? Such a great sequence. So basically, sheriff can't catch him, so he's trying to figure out, like, well, hey, I need a little extra help, so you know, whatnot. But you know, such a great sequence. Um, oh, good grief! Like I said, it's really hard to talk through a chase sequence like this and whatnot because with I think obviously Stallone has a bit of a I'm not sure if he has a biking background and whatnot, but I know he was able to do a lot of these biking stunts by himself, but some of them obviously are done with stunt guy. But yeah, that's pretty much how a normal car would fly off the hill here. And usually in much more later eight movies, there'd be like a giant explosion that would happen because the car would somehow magically explode off of going off of a hill like that. But I'm kind of glad that they kept it grounded too. That's another thing that's great about this movie is that it's also kind of grounded a bit of reality. Same thing with the motorcycle there when Rambo accidentally flips it over. But I mean, you can tell that, of course, Stallone had, he had already done Rocky by this point, obviously, and he had also done Rocky 2 and whatnot. So he was looking for a new project, and he came across this basically, and it was, he was like, okay, I kind of want to do this, and so now basically we have, basically two franchises with one man, both having, characters who start with the name of R. We got Rocky and Rambo, so. Of course, this movie would go on to make a bunch of money and whatnot. Now, this scene here where he's basically grabbed this rope and he's getting ready to make this little, little pullover. This was all done for real. Stallone actually did this and whatnot, and which is kind of interesting because you just kind of see how all he really has on him is his hunting knife, and so when he finds this little thing basically to cover him up, basically to keep him warm. Apparently, he did this for real, and they basically, because he finds like this old piece of tarp, and basically it's just making himself basically some sort of a overcoat basically to keep himself warm for the cold temperatures and whatnot. It's a survival instinct, and anybody would go to great depths to basically make sure in order for themselves to survive, the body basically just goes into this survival mode. It's like, I'm going to do whatever I need to do to stay alive, basically. So now the other cops, show up, and we're going to have the dogs brought in, basically. And so, yeah, so such a great sequence. So as you can tell, the cop who he was talking to, if you notice, he now has a giant band-aid on his nose. That's the same cop that Rambo elbowed in the nose on his way out of the station there. So basically, this what's great about this little tarp that Rambo's now wearing. Basically, it stays. It's pretty much nothing really changes on it, which is great, and it's all kept the same way and stuff throughout the entire rest of the film when he uses it. And I want to say they shot this at a state park, obviously, but as to where, I'm not quite certain. I'm sure there's probably loads of videos out there of like Rambo locations and stuff like that. But now, of course, I remember seeing this movie in the theater when they were playing it for like an anniversary, and just the sound is just absolutely great and whatnot. Especially when you have older films like this, there's just something about just the sheer like when the way the framing is and whatnot compared to more digital films and whatnot. But so as you can tell, Rambo's got these these you can tell he's got something in there and whatnot. But but obviously you won't see that until later. So which is kind of interesting. But you'll see exactly what he has hiding in that in the knife holder, basically. So, but yeah. So, obviously, you can tell Stallone's getting pretty exhausted there. I'm sure they probably did several takes and whatnot of him climbing up these rocks and everything. But, of course, Stallone's basically, he's, obviously he's pretty fit and whatnot. But you just gotta love the fact that here it is. They got all these cops here, and they're basically going up trying to get this guy into the woods. And basically, what's kind of interesting is that cops basically saying, "Hey, basically, here we are. We're a pretty elite force, but it's kind of, he basically went through us like we were nothing." And of course, with Rambo compared with his war experience compared to, local county cops, obviously there's going to be a big difference in training. But yeah, so Stallone thinks he's trapped and whatnot. Got Rambo figured out like, well, that's not good. But of course, we also do see another piece of foreshadowing there and whatnot. But if I apologize though if you're hearing noise in the background. My dogs are currently in here with me as I record this. So, so if you hear, like I said, any other awkward sounds, that would be because the dogs are in here. So, yep, they wanted to come and enjoy the dog scenes with that are in Rambo because they hear dogs barking on the screen and whatnot. So they're trying to figure out, hey, what's going on? Anyways, so Rambo's gonna try to make his way down this cliff, basically, and one of the interesting things about this is the sequence that happens here very shortly is that Stallone actually injures himself for real, and it was kept in the film. So now here we have the cop character of Galt. He's the one that basically is just telling Rambo that he's going to break his fingers off when he wants to with the baton, basically. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure exactly. I mean, you can kind of tell that Rambo's he kind of accidentally cornered himself, and he's like, oh crap! If I lose my grip here, I'm just gonna be dead. And so so now he sees the chopper there in the far background and whatnot, and like, well, what do I do? I gotta figure out how to get out of this situation like really, really quick. Otherwise, I'm basically as good as dead. As long as I gotta get moving. Otherwise, my strike's gonna, my whole body's just gonna give away because it's tired. I mean, no matter how much training you do, eventually your body just wears itself out. Basically, regardless of how much training you've had, even if it's in rock climbing or anything. But I mean, although you gotta love the fact that it's also like the environment that they're at is, it's pretty damp at the location of where they're at. Basically, the pilot's basically saying that they're in a thermal draft, so they can't keep the copter straight. Basically, but of course, the cops of course, with Galt, the character of Galt, though, basically he was also like I said, he was also friends, with, of course, with the sheriff and whatnot, because both of those guys are actually they're also like I mentioned about the sheriff, how he's a Korean vet. The character of Galt also is a Korean vet as well, because I think that's actually mentioned in one of the commentaries or one of the characters' backstories or something like that. Um, but so that's a stuntman there who leaps off the cliff and whatnot down into the trees. But here, this close-up sequence coming up, literally almost right about here. Just a second, right there, that sequence right there where Rambo's saying "Oh Jesus" like that when he's whining and complaining like that. That is Stallone for real, and Stallone actually injured his ribs during that scene, during that take, and he's also scratched up his arm pretty good, as you can tell. It's in the I think that's actually a real cut. I think that actually happened, but he actually injured his ribs on that branch, and which is and I'm surprised because they actually left the take in the movie, which is kind of interesting. Because sometimes when you make a film and you have those accidental mistakes, sometimes those real reactions are what really help sell the scene, basically, and whatnot. But I mean, it's such a great sequence, very intense and whatnot. But so I mean, so because Gulp basically he won't stop, he just wants to take Rambo out, basically, and so then there goes Galt. Basically, he's you know unfortunately kind of Rambo wasn't expecting that to happen, but unfortunately, Gulp, being the type of character that he is, just wants to take him out, basically, just because he escaped from jail, basically. Um, so basically, I mean, landing, you know, head first on a rock, obviously, that's not gonna, yep, gone. So Rambo's basically like, he's like looking at him. At first, he's like, really, and now he's looking at him like, well, great, what do I do now? Um, what was kind of interesting is that how he kind of takes his coat off of him a little bit because he was going to use it, but then he's like, no, actually he does use it. He actually takes off his raincoat actually, and basically to kind of help keep him stable, or used for fire as he does later on in the film. Um, but you know, so such a great sequence though. But I mean, yeah, that's gotta hurt. So, but yeah, you can definitely tell that with Brian's acting here is it's like, oh god, just now I've lost my best friend. Now I got to check it out. So now Rambo basically has this hiding in the handle of his knife. There is basically a small sewing kit, basically stitch himself up in a basically in any kind of environment, basically. And I'm not sure if this is actually done for real. It looks pretty real to me, given the fact of how much blood is actually coming out of Stallone's arm right there. But it's hard saying. But then again, that could have been real, as far as I could tell. But I would have to do some research on it. But yeah, I mean, it looks like a real cut though. It looks pretty deep. So, anyways, so now we're back to Stallone basically saying, "Hey, I didn't do anything. He basically didn't want anything to happen to anybody because he's just saying that he's innocent, and of course the cops saying, no, you're not innocent. You just killed a cop. No, you're the ones that chased me. I didn't do anything. You're the ones that put me in jail, and I didn't want to do anything." And so yeah, so I kind of grazed him there a little bit, which is kind of interesting. And that's how he kind of gets the headband basically later on in the film, basically, and that headband would basically become an iconic, part of the character, especially in 2 and 3. Um, but well, I mean, he also has it in the fourth film as well, but it's obviously it's a different one. Um, but I tell you what, though, I mean, I love Brian's acting in this whole movie. I mean, it's just great. I mean, it's like he basically he's like, you know what? I'm going to get rid of this guy. I'm going to deal with him my way. And basically, now they're learning that Rambo's basically a Green Beret uh, who was in the Vietnam, and basically they're like, oh, no wonder he's so good. Well, we got to take him out anyway. So, oh man, such a great movie though. Basically, it's like I said, it's this movie's so good, especially if you love good old '80s action movies. Obviously, this one is definitely a must watch. But yeah, I mean, so now one thing I haven't really mentioned, haven't tackled on it yet, though, basically is the way Ted had directed this film. It's it's such a great film. The way he keeps especially during an action scene, how he just keeps his cameras rolling, and a lot of it is some of it's actually kind of handheld and whatnot. But then you gotta love some of these stationary close-up shots, the way how close they are to the frame and stuff. Um, but yeah, I mean, sadly, Ted will be missed. I mean, he's made some other great movies too, including one with Gene Hackman entitled "Uncommon Valor," which is another great film that Ted Kotcheff directed. Um, but so now we're back to Rambo here. It's sad though that Ted never really directed the second film of the series at all. But what's kind of interesting is that the reason why he wanted to do this was because it was like a realistic take of Vietnam veterans coming back home from the war and stuff. How basically, how the world, how basically America looks at these guys and they're like, well, we won World War II. We kind of somewhat won the Korean War, but we lost Vietnam, and we weren't supposed to lose Vietnam, right? That really wasn't up to us, but you know, so basically, lots of people looked down at the whole situation at Vietnam because we really weren't supposed to be there. If you really do a lot of deep dive research into Vietnam, it's still pretty controversial to this day. Basically, I'm sure someday we'll probably get some sort of real answers as to why we went there in the first place. Um, but so now the basically the next sequence here. We're still out in the forest, but it's starting to get kind of darker and whatnot. So yeah, this can be a little hard if you're a dog person. I mean, you hear the dog yelp and stuff, but you know, but like I said though, I mean, this movie's you know, they don't show anything, which is great, but you know. But of course, the dogs are Dobermans. Of course, they're pretty decent. They're hunting dogs, basically. You don't want to mess with them. They got a nice little bite on them. Um, but also, I mean, you look at the some of the uh, some of the gunfire that's coming out of these weapons back then. I mean, just the muzzle flare, the muzzle flash that comes out of those, basically, and whatnot. But yeah, yep. So and there goes basically the other one. So like I said, it's a little bit hard if you're a dog person to deal with, but it only happens for like 2 seconds. So thankfully though, you don't see anything, which is great. So um, of course, you got the cops there, of course, with their with their hat covers on. That way they don't damage their hats because they're like a faux leather type of sheriff hat and whatnot. But I love that. Basically, they Rainbow basically uh, fakes it. He sets up a scarecrow. They messes everything up for him. But I love the fact that how great the lighting is. You can tell it's almost like a natural light shot in this film. Um, but it's such a great movie. I'll probably end up saying that quite an awful lot throughout this entire movie because, well, it is great. It's obviously one of the best movies in Stallone's entire catalog. Um, but also, I also love the fact that here it is. You got these cops basically, and it makes you wonder that if a lot of these guys are actually hunters in their off time, like going out to hunt deer and or whatever. Of course, they may end up. That's what they may end up doing because obviously they're out there in this small town, and they're just surrounded by woods, basically. So, you know, why wouldn't you? Um, so, but yeah. I mean, I love some of these shots, the way that it just keeps on moving. Obviously, it's a, you know, movie in the woods, basically, for a good chunk of this film, really, until the end of the movie. And a lot of it is, especially with the continuity, that's got to be pretty hard to keep tabs of, especially, not only keep tabs, but to keep track of, basically. Um, but some of these shots in this film are so easy, so simple. It's just a simple, pan shot from basically from left to right for several, cuts throughout this entire sequence. And it doesn't really matter where you're at in the woods because, all the woods look the same. So you could just be walking in the same direction, but, hey, look, I'm going to take this. Let's just stay where you're at, but go in that direction. We'll just move the camera and go that way with it. So for all we know, they could be working in a small area, which is basically, about the size of a small kitchen, you know. Um, but yeah, of course, this scene does drag on for a little bit because obviously it's a search and find type of sequence. But of course, Rambo's got a few little surprises waiting for him and stuff because obviously now his Vietnam, his hunting skills are coming into play here and whatnot. Um, you know, yep, there he goes, and there we go. Took one out. Luckily, it was the young cop. He took him out first with his behind his leg. Obviously, if you take somebody out with a leg like that, they're going to be basically impaired, and they're not going to be getting up for a while. Of course, they're screaming for the sheriff, whose name is Will. Um, I believe it's Will Tassel is his full name. Um, but you know, oh, such a great sequence. Especially, it's a great game of cat and mouse. Basically, yep, there he is. Takes out cop number two and whatnot. But I mean, you gotta love the fact that there he is. He's not, Rambo's basically he's not wanting to kill anybody because he's done enough of that. He did plenty of that when he was in Vietnam. He just wanted to go home and basically try to get back to a normal life, which obviously now he's having to do basically nothing. He can't really do anything. So somebody shot somebody. That's not going to be good. um, but yeah, I mean, ouch, that's gotta hurt. So that's where those spikes went to. That's gotta hurt. Definitely multiple spikes, and you'll see that trap, quite a bit, especially in '80s movies. I mean, that's also another similar trap that Schwarzenegger would use in Predator, kind of. But yeah, I mean, when you got those, those the sticks, embedded into your legs, that's gonna hurt. But of course, you know, I think he's basically taken pretty much almost everybody out, except for I think one or two guys left. And what's great about this is that there's really not a whole lot of gore in this movie. I mean, there's some blood, but I mean, there's not really so far like the goriest shot really is basically the character of Galt with him lying on the rocks like that. Of course, and Rambo stitching up his arm, but um, I mean, there's not really an extreme amount of gore in here, but it's just enough to where basically it's like saying, "Hey," and oh boy, yep. So there's Rambo basically saying, "Hey, he could have killed all of them. He could have killed you. He could have killed him." Basically telling him, "Don't push it because he's going to give him a war that he wouldn't believe." Such a great line, and basically he's just telling this cop to basically, "Hey, let it go. And seriously, just let things go. I want to be on my way." But of course, you got that. Gotta love this great acting sequence there by Brian Denny because there he is. I mean, you have basically you had a knife at your throat, and of course, uh, he basically he breaks down. It's like, oh my god, I could have died right then and there, but you know, but I'm still not going to give up on this because we need to basically get him uh, get this guy out of here, basically, and put him in jail. But so now we've got all the now, of course, now the town's all gotten involved. You got the local media there and whatnot, what's going on, basically, and whatnot. So now news has gone around basically saying, hey, so now we got this situation going on where basically this supposed fugitive is basically, on the loose here in this small town, and we need to take care of this quickly. So you gotta love it. It's such a small sequence, small little town, which is great. So now, of course, the state cops try to tell him, hey, Dave, that's the state cop's name. Basically, it's like, hey, jurisdiction, that'll be crap in my town. I'm gonna do what I want to do because it's my town and whatnot. But I love some of these shots though. It'd be great to have that in your backyard as a backdrop. You know, so basically, they're saying that Rambo is basically a fugitive from the law. He's basically, you know, on the hunt and whatnot. And of course, you got Channel 12 there, you know, looking at stuff like that. Of course, you could definitely tell those are some definitely very early cameras in the 80s because they still, I'm not sure if I think they just started using VHS back then. But yeah, that's very old camera right there. I don't think that they, uh, but yeah. So, what can we say though? But you gotta tell that the character of Lester here, who's like I said, the guy who has his nose busted, basically saying, "Hey, well, they were a little hard on the guy inside the jail." He's like, "Really? Well, if there was a problem with him, would have somebody come to me about it?" No, not really. um, so basically, he says that the prisoner comes to him. Yeah, yeah. No, Rambo's gonna basically, I'm gonna do what I need to do. Um, So, and that's kind of true what he says. Basically, people saying basically all people start screwing up the law and all hell breaks loose. And such a great line. Whatever possessed God to make a man like Rambo. God didn't make Rambo. I made him. Yeah, here we have the introduction of Colonel Sam Trautman, played by the great Richard Crenna. Um, Originally, I think they were wanting to get Sean Connery, I think, for this role way back in the when they were trying to get it filmed and whatnot, and that would have been very interesting, decision had Sean decided to do it, but unfortunately, he decided not to do it. Either that, or he didn't like the script, or something like that. But of course, now with Richard Crenna, basically playing the character Troutman, you can't really, have anybody else playing this character. And of course, now he's trying basically, I love how Troutman's basically saying, hey, you know, I trained this guy. You have no idea what you're dealing with. And basically, hey, let me be the one to bring him in. Because he'll listen to me. He's not going to listen to you. And the fact is that, you got to love the fact that, the cop still is like, that Teasel is basically saying, "Hey, I'm going to do what I need to do." He's like, "Well, okay, good luck, buddy, but I'm not going to, do anything for you." But basically, he's telling these guys, like, "Hey, in Vietnam, we train these guys basically to do anything it takes to survive, basically to kill, eat anything just to survive." And according to him, that's because Rambo was absolutely the best that he ever trained, and but and what's kind of interesting is that here's Rambo basically, doing what he's was trained to do. Basically, you got a giant boar down there, and time for some good food. Boom. So there we go. Yep, it's probably about the goriest shot you'll probably get throughout the film. But hey, that'll uh, that's such so. It's very interesting of how they actually still use that. Um, Basically to have him basically survive and whatnot. But of course, he's got his stuff set up to where he can, uh, basically just trying to say, hey, well, if I know if anybody messes with this thing, I know that they're going to be nearby. And what's great is that it's actually an old mine shaft, is what he found. And of course, Teasel's like basically like saying, hey, really, you got us all scared? you don't get it, do you? He's like, you really don't get it. And of course, I love that what Troutman's basically telling him. It's like, well, you can either do this my way, or you're all going to basically just die. And basically, at this, if you keep going the way you're going to go, then and whatnot. But of course, you can kind of tell that Teasel's still kind of using his Korean War training, like basically saying, but 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 you gotta love the fact that he's telling them basically the special forces that they teach their people to stay in the line of duty, and I love the fact that he's like, hey, if you're gonna bring in 200 men, will that help out? No. You better have a good supply of body bags. And Rambo will take every one of them out, and you're like, oh. And he's like, you're actually serious. Yeah, I am serious. And but yeah, I mean, you gotta love the character of Trautman. I mean, he, especially when he goes on throughout the rest of the original three films, especially the third film, because the third film, Trautman basically becomes a POW with that movie, and it's kind of interesting what they do with that film. But we'll do that one here in a while. So it's kind of interesting that Rambo actually does have he's got a radio. He stole one of the cops' radios that he can try to keep in contact. But of course, Rambo's just completely ignoring everything and whatnot. It's like, of course, there's the state cops are talking to him. They're like, "Yeah, I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to stay here and eat my giant pig. Got some decent food frying on the fire there." So yeah, such a great lighting, especially with the whole thing is just lit by a fire, which is just kind of interesting. But it's kind of interesting how they're going to try to get him to try to pinpoint, where Rambo was actually located. But of course, he's now Teasel's basically saying, "Hey, we know he's on, that Rambo's basically he's not going to break radio silence for them, but he might do it for you." It's like, okay, well, I'll give it a try and see, but I don't even know if he's going to even listen to me either, because they had some. Of course, they had some issues, in Vietnam with, their commanders and whatnot. Uh, so, I love that Rambo's face there is just lit by a fire. It's very interesting. So we understand that basically now that Rambo's code name in Vietnam was Raven, which is kind of cool. Covey leader to Raven. Talk to me, Johnny. That's what kind of how now he's trying to identify Baker team, which is basically he's talking about his entire team basically, and of course he mentions Danforth and Barry, of course Barry being Delmar and whatnot. But yeah, I mean, such a great sequence and whatnot. So yeah, such a great movie. So now that basically Rambo's been identified, basically Travis basically telling Rambo that Delmar Barry made it back, and he goes, "No, he didn't. Got himself killed in Nam, didn't even know it. Cancer ate him to the bone." Basically, he's talking about the Agent Orange stuff. So now he's basically telling him that he's the last one of his entire outfit. And of course, he's trying to tell him like, "Hey, you did a little bit of damage here. We kind of, I kind of came here to kind of help you get out of here." And of course, he's just trying to tell him like, it's like, "Hey, like I didn't even know you were here. So where'd you come from?" Basically, he was trying to tell that he was actually at that he was that Trautman was basically stationed at Fort Bragg during the war, but he wasn't at Bragg by the time Rambo came back to the States, whatnot. Um, so he's trying to basically say, hey, there are no friendly civilians. And Rambo's basically telling, like, well, that's basically, hey, there are no civilians from my point of view because as all I see right now are enemies at one point. And basically, uh, you gotta love that Rambo is basically saying, hey, I wouldn't have had any trouble there at all if it wasn't for that cop. And he's talking, of course, about Teasel. And you gotta love the fact that Rambo's basically saying, hey, they drew first blood, not me. I didn't even do anything. And so here's the situation where we're at now because they started the fight. It's like anybody would do that type of thing. It's like, well, he did it first. And of course, now he's going to ignore Tassel and also Trautman as well. So he's just going to ignore him. But the funny thing is that now they've got he's done. Rambo's basically done talking, and they kind of now have his fix on his location and whatnot. So, oh man, such a great bit of acting there by Trautman, basically saying like, great, what? It's like now we're gonna have the National Guard come in and like, great, now I gotta deal with this and whatnot. So, you know, but I mean, you gotta love Jerry's score right here. Of course, such a great use. Of course, just the drum and the piano. Basically, it's almost kind of like just repeating the same notes here and there, here and there. But still such an absolutely great score. Definitely one of Jerry's best. Obviously, now this came out in I believe '81, so he had already won the Oscar for The Omen by this point. Of course, Jerry, he had done a lot of great scores long before Rambo. I mean, we're talking stuff from like the just got to start around in like the late '50s, early '60s, like with many other great composers of that era. Like John Williams and John Barry, all those great scores from the early '60s, '70s. So, of course, now you got this little kid out of nowhere who just somehow found him by accident. He has no idea who this kid is. Of course, Rambo's like seriously, out of everybody that I'm trying to hide from, this random kid, found me. And of course, guy's gotta go tell his pa, and so and apparently they found him. That was easy. So, of course, now they're firing so that way all the National Guard knows kind of where the shots came from. So, but it's kind of surprised of how that one kid basically gave Rambo up, basically. So, such a great chase sequence. Once again, it's static shots and panning shots. Very simple. But of course, Rambo has now made his way back to this mine shaft and whatnot, which is, of course, it's an abandoned mine shaft. But of course, he basically he wants Tassel's the one that wants to bring Rambo in. Basically, he wants him alive so he can basically have him go to prison. Basically, but man, you gotta love the gunfire coming out of those guns, man. That's got to be a lot of firepower. Of course, Rambo doesn't have much ammunition. He is really either that or no, he's out. He's actually out of ammunition, I think. You gotta love the one National Guard guy. He's like, dude, come on, let's keep shooting. They're like, I'm not shooting in there, Steve. There's a guy named Steve. I mean, here it is. You got these guys that are supposedly National Guard, and they're like, yeah, I only do this part time. I love it. The guy only does this part time. Oh, that's funny. Of course, you got the one guy that like it's almost like Teasel once again. He's like, "Hey, you're gonna. I guess I'll be team leader. I guess, and whatnot." So, I mean, it's such a funny little sequence. They're like, "Yeah, I'm not. Who's got the rocket launcher? That's great. Come here, Earl." So apparently, Earl has the he has the rocket launcher, and that's. I don't think you'll actually see this hardly at all that much, but of course, they all think that Rambo is basically a killer at this point. And of course, you always got to get the one guy who's basically like, "Hey, I'm the one in charge here. Do what I say." And of course, everybody's all like, "I'm not going in there. I'm not listening to you," and whatnot. But so yeah, practical explosions. Yes, guarantee you the that shot. If that thing was shot today, I guarantee you we probably would have had an additional 10, 20 seconds on there with slow motion explosion, slow motion running of the character, running deep into the mine shaft and then jumping away from the explosion in slow motion as well. But I love the fact that, literally everything, it's, a lot of it is all practical effects, hardly no CGI, not even, actually no CGI at all, because, well, it wasn't really around then, obviously. CG really wouldn't come into effect, obviously, because until, like, of course, 80, 81 with certain visual effect movies. But with a movie like Rambo, I love the fact that it's grounded in reality, which is great and whatnot. But so yeah, you gotta love that. Trautman's with him and whatnot, which is kind of interesting. Um, but of course, they all think that they got him, and oh, good grief, getting a picture taken. Oh, jeez, that's funny. That's so funny. They're like, "Yeah, look at us, we got him," and he was shooting at us, man. Come on, I wasn't gonna take any chances. Like, I used the rocket launcher on him. Oh man, that's such a great sequence. They ever have to dig his body out of there right away. He's like, "You can't." I love it. They're telling him that you can't get a bulldozer up here. That's funny. He's got to be back at He apparently works at the drugstore. That's funny. He's gonna be back at the drugstore tomorrow. That's great. But man, such great lighting though. I wonder if the director of photography. I wonder if he learned a few things from Gordon Willis about shooting basically with just very minimal light, which is great because all you're seeing is just a match and everything else is uh, black basically, which is great. Because you got this sequence where basically you have no idea what's going on, which is great because that's kind of it's basically how it is when you go into a mine shaft. It's dark, no light gets in, so you gotta use your own knife as a basically as a torch at this point. So that's funny. He's just another drifter that broke the law. Yeah, well, he's like, well, what can we say? If he was the best, then well, he'll show you the best. And really, he kind of I mean, really, Rambo really shines obviously in the second movie, but then again, he has a great sequence that happens later on in this film and whatnot. Uh, but you gotta love the fact that that Tess was basically saying, "Hey, I know you guys had a lot of hard time in Vietnam and whatnot, but you think Rambo's the only one that actually had any issues?" Um, yeah, well, he's got a point. So I think he has Troutman there, but so a little bit. But you gotta love though that basically Troutman's just standing there watching him, basically saying, "Hey, you can just keep on complaining, you know, like it's like, hey, you lost. I'm just gonna keep on staring at you, just let you vent and whatnot." But he's like, "You seriously have absolutely no idea who you are dealing with." And of course, that'll come back to haunt, you know, Teasel here in the later part of the film. It's a very long, foreshadowing, but it happened. It's it's just something that you'll notice if you watch this movie so much, you'll be able to tell instantly like where a lot of the foreshadowing is. But you know, it's almost like Troutman kind of knows what Rambo's thinking or kind of what he's doing. It's like he's been in situations like this before, and that excuse me, that he's been in situations before and he kind of knows how to handle himself. Basically, obviously, he handled getting out of the prison basically at the in Vietnam, so he can definitely handle himself. Um, which I believe this is a set. I'm not sure if this was an actual mine shaft that they shot in or whatnot, but ouch! I think that was real. I believe when he comes down the that ladder there. Um, because I think he may have re-injured. Of course, he's looking to see if he re-injured his arm and whatnot, but I don't think he did because the stitches are still. His sewing is still there, but uh, so now we're back at the sheriff's station there. Of course, he's got the cougar thing on the front of his desk there. So of course, Troutman. Of course, now you can. I mean, if you look at the look over there at the at his right behind him, you can tell Will also got is also a decorated war vet. He also got himself the Purple Heart as well. It's very quick, but he is a soldier as well. Like I said, he's a soldier of the Korean War, and that didn't go over so with a whole lot of people because because World War II had just finished, and then literally the Korean War began literally like almost less than a decade later, about half a decade later. 5 to 6 years after that, after the end of World War II, the Korean War happened. Um, but we weren't really directly involved in that. But of course, when Vietnam hit, it was like okay, but oh, rats, nasty, nasty little things. But you know, yeah, I wonder if this is a similar set to. Oh God, I hate to have those on my back. Slow's got those rats on him and stuff. Of course, yeah, I'd be doing that too. I'd be freaking out and slamming them in the water and stuff too. That's gotta hurt. I'd get out of there. Nasty little things. Of course, yeah, pretty intense, music cue there. Of course, it's almost like a Indiana Jones type of thing, but you know, obviously this isn't Indiana Jones; it's Rambo. Um, but you know, got a little fact that he's still able to keep his torch alive. But God, you gotta wonder how Stallone didn't burn himself by doing that. You just don't know. But oh, it's almost kind of hard to kind of keep on talking through this sequence because this, kind of don't really know what to say. But you gotta love these long takes though, of kind of him going through this, figuring out what's going on. But so, well, definitely having a beer, or in this case, a glass of wine. So, of course, so we have to have a sit down sequence here with the Colonel and Troutman and Teasel. So, wild turkey shooter. Of course, now he's trying to make up for what he's how he was acting around the Colonel and whatnot. But of course, Troutman's like, that really doesn't make much difference now, does it? It's like, no, not really. But oh man, but I mean, it just kind of feels like that this movie. It's just like this sequence just kind of comes up out of nowhere, and you're just like, well, he's basically saying, hey, he wanted to kill him basically because of what he did inside the inside the police station. But of course, with him being a little bit corrupted and whatnot, he can get. Of course, he kind of but Troutman's got a point basically. It's like saying, well, you're a cop. You're not real. You're the sheriff of a town. You're really not supposed to kill people. And of course, Trautman's basically also tells me, you know what? When you're in doubt, then you kill. When you're trying to survive, at your you kill literally like you have no way out, then that's what you do to survive. But you know, oh, gotta love the fact that Brian Denny still has that scar on his chin there. Um, but of course, Trautman's basically saying, like, well, hey, I can't really answer your question for you until I meet him face to face and find out really what goes on, with him directly face to face. Because otherwise, I won't be able to kind of read it. I won't be able to tell his reaction or kind of read his reaction as because sometimes it's just easier to talk to people face to face. I think, in my opinion, because that's how I have to do stuff. Because I know if I talk to somebody, it has to be face to face. Otherwise, sometimes you just get confused. It just happens with certain people. So, this is a pretty long mine shaft that Rambo's in, but I think yeah, look at that. He found the exit finally. So, um, but yeah, he's like, Rambo's thinking, oh, thank God, I finally found the exit. So, you can kind of tell Rambo's kind of starting to, he's kind of got this this reaction where he's basically like, oh man, is this thing over yet, or I'm pretty much getting exhausted here, and you can tell he's struggling to get up the ladder quite a bit. But of course, his instincts are kicking, or his survival instincts are kicking into gear once again. I mean, because with this movie though, basically it's all about survival. Basically, it's he was the hunter and now he's become the hunted. So, um, just kind of interesting that his with that because if you notice now he doesn't have that tarp on him anymore because he had to use that to basically make his torch and stuff. So he's now back down to wearing just a tank top basically and whatnot. So yep, another stunt there. I think Stallone did that stunt for real, but uh, look at that. That's great. That's funny. Look at the expression on the guy's face, like, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. He's freaking out. I mean, obviously, anybody would when you have uh, a knife pointed at you, but well, they're with that guy. But you gotta love how he tells him what kind of weapon he's got back there. He's got the M60 assault rifle, which is one of the if you've probably seen the original trailer, it's kind of what Rambo uses towards the end of the film here. So it's a pretty big weapon and whatnot. So, oh man. So now we're back at the cop station again, and well, basically he's not taking. They're saying that hey, Diesel's not taking any calls and whatnot. He's still trying to figure out what to do. But if you look at Dennehy's acting in the background, he's just kind of sitting back there, either listening or just trying to figure out what to do. Um, but of course, he slowly gets up in the background, and it's like, really, that guy's still alive? Like, why? He should have been taken care of hours ago. And but we're finally starting to make our way towards the ending climax sequence here in the film. Now, this movie runs for, it's not really that long of a film. It's only about an hour and a half, and it goes by pretty quickly, which is really great. And it's not a long movie at all, which is pretty much get from point A to point B basically. And so I love how cop cars trying to chase down a military truck, but it's the same truck that Rambo stole that he's going to drive back into town. And with this sequence that's coming up, you can tell that the truck stunt is done for real, basically. Uh, which will be coming up here in just a few minutes. Of course, we have to have another chase sequence, but of course, if this was made today, it would have been a lot faster with a lot faster shots and lots of close-ups and extreme camera shakes and whatnot. But You know, such a great sequence. Of course, you know, the cop cars weaving all over the road and everything, but you're like, well, hey, what are you going to do? Probably the brakes aren't that great on that vehicle, but, you know, I love it. He almost has like an Indiana Jones type of thing there. Boom! There's an explosion right there. Yeah. But you gotta love that. He kind of hesitates and he hits the cop car, making the explosion there. Yeah. Gotta love some good explosions. So they kind of saved all this for the ending of the movie. So now Rambo's made his way back into, almost all the way back into the town because that's the same bridge that he basically was taken at in the first place. So here we have this really awesome truck stunt coming up, slow motion shot, and that is done for real, folks. You can tell the way it was angled and how it's moving up and down and stuff. That is a real take. You know, no CG. Cars smashing into cars. There you go. But it's kind of funny of how much time has been lost from this cut, so which is kind of interesting because it's still like kind of loosely daylight out, so now we're back into rain, like nighttime shot now. So yeah, running into the gas tanks, and that's definitely a giant foreshadow here, which will happen here in a little while. So he's grabbed the M60 machine gun there, and you gotta love what he does with this gun. So great, and we're gonna have some nice big explosions here in just a minute. Gotta love practical effects, real fire, real stunts, all for real, special effects. Boom! Yeah, you gotta love some explosions, especially when it's all real, all done in camera, and I don't. Boom! You can tell you can tell how the camera shakes there. There's actually like a shock, like the shockwave of the explosion, basically. Um, it basically just made the camera shake, which is kind of interesting. Of course, that would have been, I guarantee you half of that probably would have been CGI with today. But hey, Dairy Queen, that sounds pretty good. Um, but yeah, you gotta love all the signs and stuff. A lot of those places you just don't see anymore. Because whenever there was a Dairy Queen, there was always be like a Brazier there, and then of course Chevron, that's still around. Um, but Cool Lights, obviously those are still around. But um, then what else is there? Oh, I still got the old '70s Coke slogan there, which is great. So Will basically has no choice, basically, to shut down the town, basically, until he can get this matter resolved. Which is something that you don't really have happen a whole lot. But like I said, basically, it's uh, you know, man, everybody's really running their way out of the city or out of the town, basically, to stay indoors. uh, but yeah, I mean, so here we are. We're getting towards the end of the movie, and like I said, you can kind of tell right there next to that eagle statue, there are uh, his uh, uh, his war medals, basically, whatnot. Um, but you just gotta love the fact that Trautman's basically like, hey, what are you doing? Like, it's like, hey, I'm gonna do this my way. He started this war and whatnot, so and I'm gonna finish it. So, of course, Trautman basically he suspected that he was alive, but he never knew. And since he now Tassel's basically saying, hey, you trained him, you taught him, so now I'm gonna deal with your little problem. And now basically I'm gonna do things my way. You gotta love it how Trautman basically says that that your men weren't able to handle him out there in the forest. How can you handle him now? It's like I'll try to do what I can do. But this sequence is so great though. Basically, Rambo goes on a rampage. Basically, yeah, I love it. There's only one man in this room that's got half a chance, which is a great line because Trautman's basically saying, "Hey, he trusts me more than you." And basically, if you're not going to listen, then I'll just try to talk him out of it. And of course, Trautman's basically saying that, or not Trautman, but Teasel's basically saying, "Hey, this is my job, my town. I'm not giving it up to you or anybody else. I'm going to do things my way. Just stay out of my way." And of course, it'll lead right up to basically, well, another foreshadow of what happens with Will's character, basically. Um, got all the fact that the fuel is still on fire, is coming out like a blowtorch. Basically, you still got two blowtorches going on. But oh, this is so great. I mean, God, look at that radio. I mean, that's old school right there. That's really old school. You don't see that anymore. Of course, Tassel thinks like, hey, if I can, how about I go up to the roof? He won't go up to the roof. And of course, what can we say? It's a Christmas movie. Of course, you got the little Christmas tree right there, and heading up to the roof to, because I'm not sure if his character was like a sharpshooter or a possible sniper back in the Korean War. It's never really specified really on what Teasel's occupation was during the Korean War. But you gotta love that wide shot. You can tell it's an actual town. I'm not sure exactly where they shot this at. Because you can tell that fire is there. That's either done for real or it's like a matte painting. But I would say it's all for real because if you look at because you got street lights going off, you have blinking lights, you got Christmas lights all over the place, and well, you know what? How about I just take out the power? So, which is of course, you gotta love the old school, gun sound effects and stuff. But of course, what Rambo's doing is basically he's going under the cover of darkness, which is great because he's got that that advantage point basically, shooting up the glass and all that stuff. I mean that's just great, so great, taking out all the power lights and whatnot, which is great. I mean, like I said, basically, I mean, it's once again, it's another game of cat and mouse. Basically, that's kind of what him and Teasel have been doing throughout this whole movie. I mean, basically, it's Rambo basically being the cat and everybody else is the mouse. Because obviously with Rambo's experience, he's gonna know kind of what to do and how to take care of whatever it is he needs to do. But that's such a great shot of him with all with all the ammo around him and stuff and whatnot. But I mean, man, if you were in there, you'd get a whole bunch of ammo. But I think a lot of it's empty boxes. Unfortunately, got fuel there and yeah, some explosions. There we go. Of course, he's getting ready to do some pretty big time damage there with all that. So it's gonna be some great stuff. I mean, that's all gunpowder too, and you just kind of wonder what he's gonna end up doing, which is so great though. I mean, you really don't know what Rambo's gonna do really until obviously you see this a bunch. Then obviously you know what happens, but So yeah, it's basically just another distraction there. That's and oh boy, yep, you don't want to go in there. Another. I wonder how they were able to do all this. Probably with practical effects and whatnot. But you can tell that, like I said, this movie was made with special effects and whatnot. And of course, he thinks that he's inside the gun store there, but. With all the bullets, actually no, all the bullets actually were in there, so they're all popping off like popcorn in there. So, of course, now he's eyeballing the police station, and boom, explosions, and yeah, there you go, another big time explosion. It's got to be like model set at some, I think, but now he knows exactly where he is and what he's going to do to get to him, which is so great. But like I said, back in the beginning, though, now you've basically taken his character of Rambo, basically from being happy for about 5 minutes, and now he's just gone on, basically a giant, rage. basically just shooting up anything and everything in sight, basically taking out the police station and all that. I mean, it's just kind of interesting seeing how this one gun can just do all this damage. But of course, you can tell that it's all practical effects and everything. And according from what Teasel has, he's got like that M16 compared to that M60. That thing's he's basically doesn't really. He thinks he's got the advantage point on him because he's up the roof and you can see through the through the skylight there. But I don't think so. I really don't think so. But of course, you got that gun there. Of course, I don't think he actually uses. I think he uses that. I think again in the second movie. But of course, Rambo could tell that he's got the advantage point on him, but Diesel can't see him because it's dark inside the building, which is why Rambo was shooting it up in the first place. Of course, you gotta love the fact that you got the lighting there in the background. You got that the fire from the fire station still going on in the background, which is great continuity um, and whatnot. But like I said, this movie is so good, and it's kind of interesting of how during this sequence, it slows down quite a bit and whatnot. Because obviously you got a bunch of cat and mouse going on, but uh, you know, ow, shot up through the roof and goes down through the skylight. Great, great stuff. Of course, you can tell Rambo really wants to get rid of it, but you kind of love that shot. It's almost like a Terminator shot, kind of, where he's just walking in there with a gun with one arm and whatnot. But so now we got Trautman now has to try to work his magic in here, basically. So here we are at this. Basically, this is the end. Towards the end of the film, basically, he wants to have. He basically wants to have Rambo go back to Fort Bragg so he can debrief him. And so now the cops are basically saying, "Hey, you know what? I'm gonna try to, you know, take him out." Basically, and of course, Trump was like, "No, I've got this. Let me deal with it." A lot, 200 men out there, and a lot of M16s. And of course, now he's snapped at him, basically saying, "Hey, that this mission is over." And you gotta love the fact that here's Stallone with that stare in his face, basically saying, "Look, staring at Trautman like really, it is not over." To me, it's not. But of course, now Troutman's basically got to the point where he's like, "Hey, it's over, it's done. Look at him out there. Look how much damage you've done." And and that's such a great line. Nothing is over. Nothing. You just don't turn it off, which is basically what he's telling him is that basically you just can't turn off his PTSD. It's because somebody wouldn't let them win Vietnam, basically. But of course, with PTSD, it can trigger at any time, and it freaks people out. Of course, when he gets back, basically he's getting mad because everybody's protesting, spitting at him, calling him names and stuff like that, and of course, uh, but it's just kind of interesting of how Rambo basically goes on this rant. Basically, he's saying, "Hey, I can't for you, civilian life. You're fine with it. I'm not. It's nothing for me." Because he basically, he was when he was in the war, he was in charge of billions of dollars of equipment. Back there, he can't even get at home. He can't even get a job parking cars because of he's a he was involved in Vietnam, and everybody just really just hated the fact that we were in Nam. But it's just kind of interesting that here it is, after Rambo's had this long, like shouting match at Trautman, he just breaks down. Basically, now he's explaining basically what happened to all of his friends in Nam. Basically, just stuff that that he noticed when he was he and his team were POWs, or so. I mean, at least he was a POW, but because I don't think they ever really mentioned the fact that they were captured at all, but that he was that they were. He's just talking about all the stuff that they were gonna catch up on and do when they got back from the war. Basically, that they were gonna go, drive around in his friend's convertible, and basically he's talking about how one time that they're at this bar in Saigon, and this kid comes up with a shoe shine box, and of course it was, it's not what it was. Basically, it was a wired box, and boom, his it basically blew up one of his friends, and that's kind of how that war was. I mean, not just that specific thing, but it's just very interesting that now he's got this PTSD, which is basically just he's basically has this long monologue of basically telling Troutman, basically, here this is what happened to my group of guys, and you weren't there, and basically he's just telling everybody that hey, we wanted to go home. We didn't even want to be there in the first place. And of course, Rambo's basically going on and on about how he can't get these images out of his head. He's had these images in his head for 7 years at this point, and that basically he's just having a hard time trying to get back to you know civilian life. Of course, with Troutman there, you look at his expression, the way he's reading Rambo, basically saying like like he understands what he went through, because obviously Troutman's been through a war before. I think Troutman used to. I think he was either involved in the Korean War, maybe World War II. We really don't know because it's not really specified. But you can basically here you have it's basically almost like this father son moment with Rambo, who's basically alone in the world, and basically Rambo just needs somebody to to listen to and hold on to, just for even if it's just for a minute, just to let him vent out all of his frustration and have a shoulder to cry on, basically, which is what's going on. And of course, a lot of soldiers had dealt with that and whatnot. But so yeah, so here we are. We're wrapping things up here with not only one of the greatest movies of the '80s, but just overall, it's just an overall, it's just a damn good movie. And of course, now Rambo's basically he's been put under arrest for his crime, for his actions. But as you can tell right there, the sheriff is still alive. He did not die. And whatnot. But the thing is that so now we have. So now if you hear the song, basically it's called "It's a Long Road," and obviously it's done in the theme. Of course, this is the Rambo theme, but with lyrics, basically. And this is what a lot of '80s movies did. Where if you would have like a main theme, basically, then they would have like a song that would have lyrics with the same notes and whatnot. But it's just kind of interesting. I'm looking at one of the actors in here, and we have a Guardsman number 5, Bruce Greenwood. I wonder if that's the Bruce Greenwood I'm thinking of, who become the president in the National Treasure movies. But now this song is not sung by by Stallone's brother Frank Stallone. It's actually sung by a man by the name of Dan Hill. And of course, now we're getting some of the stuntmen there. Of course, we have Buddy Joe Hooker, who is one of the greatest stuntmen around this time, one of the best car guys ever. And if you know him, you know his stunts. There you go. But they would always have like whenever they would end this movie, any like these '80s action movies, they'd have a certain point that they would have a certain freeze frame. They would just keep it there for the end credits to roll while the songs would play and stuff. Now they really didn't have a whole. I mean, they have end credits, but some of them were nowhere near as long as as modern movies are today. Some of them were kind of smaller than others and whatnot. But like I said, we got such a great movie here and whatnot. Definitely one anybody who is a fan of '80s action and of Stallone and looking for such a great movie. Definitely check out this series and whatnot. And so I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me commenting throughout the whole film and whatnot. What can I say? It's been definitely a fun ride and whatnot. But we've got a few more movies left in this series. Yeah, we're going to do all 5 Rambo films. They'll be done at some point. I mean, like I said, this is the first one's just an instant classic, and it just felt like a nice, tribute to to Ted Kotcheff, who directed a really great movie. Definitely one that is definitely probably his best film, probably that that he'll probably ever direct and whatnot. But yeah, so yep, so there we go. Music by Jerry Goldsmith is a long road, and with that, you guys. So with that, make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification button, and if you don't have this movie, go out and buy it. It's such a great movie to add to your collection. Get all 5 of them. And so with that, you guys, like, subscribe, hit that notification button, leave a comment down below on the YouTube page. Also, check out the Patreon page for additional fan commentaries. And with that, I will see you guys later. See ya.